What's up in War Eagle War Report family? It's your guy Ike Jones, and we are here doing a little building rapport slightly differently. This time we are talking to Mike Burgomaster here with Auburn basketball, assistant coach, and as Coach Pearl calls his offensive coordinator. Now, does he call you the offensive coordinator just because he's trying to relate to these football folks who don't really understand what's going on? Is that how that works?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I officially got the title last year,
right.
But, he said in years past, like, there's not really an offensive coordinator in college basketball, right. But, we have one. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely part of the strategy is trying to, put some football terms on, on basketball for sure.
Makes sense to me, makes sense. But let's talk about kind of what your roles and responsibilities are. And today, specifically, we want to talk about how you build a scout, right? Because Coach Pearl talks often about, he can't do this job without the wonderful scouts that you all do. And he mentions your name quite often. And I don't know if people know the face behind the scout. They've probably seen you around. But just talking about trying to build a scout. First question I want to ask you in regards to the scout is what makes a good scout team member, like someone who helps you kind of implement some of the stuff that we're going to look at?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, a good scout team member, and when you say scout team, I'm assuming you're talking specifically about like the people, like, because we work in groups, right, that are helping putting these scouts together. So like a good team member is somebody that's, working ahead of time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's somebody that's, we may have 2-3 scouts over a 2-week period, right? And so it's somebody that's working ahead and is really organized with their work, is spending lots of time on it. There's so many different facets to the game. I know sometimes, especially the style that we play, can really look like it's up and down. Right. But we're really prepared, and I think that's one of the things that has been a secret to our success for the last 10 years that Coach has been here. Is we're gonna. We may not always be as talented as the other coaching staff, but we're going to prepare harder than anybody. And so, that takes constant, work from whether it's knowing they're under out of bounds, side out of bounds, knowing their personnel, knowing what presses they run, what their press breaks are like. Like you got to know all this stuff, and you have to be an expert in it by the time the ball's tipped, because Coach is going to call on you during the game to help prepare us over the course of the game.
Yeah, so that's good. That's kind of segues into how far in advance are you all like building scouts out for guys?
Yeah, so we work in 3 teams, right? So like Stephen Burrell has a team, Ira Bowman has a team, Corey Williams has a team. I work with Ira, Chad Pruitt works with Corey. And then, Steven has a team of usually grad assistants or managers underneath him. And so the way we essentially do it, it's not exactly perfect, but we're basically every third game, gotcha. We're broken up. Now, there may be situations where you may get, every other just because of the way the SEC schedule pans out, or, the way if you have a prior relationship, or right. you're Ira and I tend to get most of the Northeast teams that we play just because we may know some of those kids or those coaches a little bit more.
Gotcha.
And so, we have a fun time though, in the preseason, but when we finally have our full schedule done, we have a fun time, we'll get in here and we'll kind of draft, our scouts. And so it's a lot of fun trying to break it up, and we're competitive about it. We keep score, we keep records.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Because come tournament time, whoever had the best record gets to choose who they want in the NCAA tournament. So
that's that. I mean, that kind of you're setting me up perfectly for these questions.
That's what I did.
Yeah, clearly. Because I like, how different is that when you get to tournament time? Because you don't know like exactly who you're playing. So like, are you all putting scouts together for like multiple teams and then paring it down once you kind of see what's happening?
So I'll say this. So Ian Borders on our staff, formerly video coordinator, his title's like director of scouting and recruiting. He does a great job come tournament time, because there's all these projections of, what seed we might be, right. and what, potential opponents we might face. So he does a really good job of preparing prior Selection Sunday, like a kind of a cheat sheet on each potential team, and he'll spend a ton of time doing that. Right. Credit to him, he does an amazing job. So the second we find out what team we are, we get in here and we get to work, and we'll quickly pick who wants what team. But one of the benefits and part of the reason why we do 3 teams is because every sort of stage of the tournament is like you're scouting 3 teams, right? You have to scout the team that that you're going to play, and then you have one team working on the 2 potential opponents. Okay. And so that way, the person that has that first game's got to get right on it, but those other 2 teams have some time where they're able to prepare, and then the second we win and we know who we're playing, we're right on to getting Coach Pearl ready and getting the team ready.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's get into some practical stuff, right? So I played basketball in middle school, right? So I had a really illustrious career as a middle school point guard, and played a little intramural basketball here at Auburn, and I went on to play for an intramural championship that we eventually lost. So I have no idea about professional scouts or scouts that are like prepared. Like, what kind of things are involved in the scout? You talked a little bit about out of bounds situations, or whether or not they're what kind of defense they set up in. But let's talk through kind of some of the stuff that you're doing to prepare a scout to get the guys prepared for a game.
Sure. So I think the way that we essentially break it down, and a lot of teams will do this very similar. This this is pretty standard, but we'll start with personnel, right? So like the players that you're playing against, what do they like to do? Do they like to drive right? Do they like to drive left? Do they?
I was at, so I'm sorry to cut you off. I was at the Huntsville Classic last year. And that's literally the entire game. Like there's like, he's a lefty, and like they're like just to let alert guys, hey, remember this guy is going to want to go left. So I'm hearing some of that stuff. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so then throughout the game too, we'll be like on every catch. Generally whoever scouted is communicating from the bench to the best of our ability. Obviously, we play in some pretty loud places. Right. It's not the easiest at Neville Arena to really communicate to them. But you're like, first and foremost, which way do they like to go? Are they a shooter? Or are they a non-shooter? And then little tendencies, specific tendencies, about certain guys. Like, do they like to shoot a dribble pull up out of their right hand? Like, so and then obviously the better players that you play against, right? They're going to be able to do a lot of things. So it's like, how can we force them to do what they do at the lowest percentage?
Right.
So, and live with that, and know that that's what they're going to try to go to. So personnel is the first thing.
Right.
Then what we do is we do what we call teaching points, which are, not necessarily something specific about individuals, but like little team things. Like, all right, this team, and I feel like every other team we play in the SEC is like this, but this team is, the third best offensive rebounding percentage team in the country. So we may show clips of them just getting offensive rebound after offensive rebound. It's like, look, if we want to win this game, this is a major part. So that it's not necessarily specific sets or personnel, right? But it's just kind of the characteristics of the team we might play. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll go through their man-to-man sets. This is what they like to run. On a secondary break, right, where they haven't all stopped and called a play, like they're just going to run right into this action. These are the ball screens they like to set in transition, that sort of stuff. And then we'll go through kind of what their most frequent plays are, and we spend a lot of time on that. After the man-to-man sets, because Coach Pearl's always pressed his entire career, we talk about like their pressure sets, and so like the amount, what they'll do to break presses, and that's a little bit more simple. It's just for us is a matter of how many guys they bring up to and then we have rules in our press about that, and then we'll go through, and Coach Pearl's been top 5 in this, I feel like, every year, but we'll, like under out of bounds defense, we spend a lot of time on too, and so we'll probably watch film with our guys 3 to 4 times for every given opponent.
Wow.
And we throw a lot at them. And, and our goal as coaches is that, we've highlighted the most important stuff, and that, probably if 20% of the stuff that we throw at them sticks, plus our job is to help remind them throughout the process, maybe that's the difference in like 4 to 6 points. But
how long is a film session if you're doing 3 to 4 of them prepping for a game?
Yeah, it can be anywhere from like 30 to 45 minutes. Prior to practice. So it kind of depends. It depends on who has the scout. Our staff always makes fun of me because mine are a little bit longer. I just don't like to miss any details.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine I try to do film review for our channel, and like I can't even imagine what it's like to try to parse through film to try to detect tendencies to that level of like player by player, right? Like, so I mean, I guess it's a little. That makes me feel like it's way more difficult to prepare for a team like Auburn was last year that's 10 deep, because you've got to scout. You legitimately have to scout 10 guys in that situation.
For sure. I mean, I think, you kind of hope that a team has a shorter bench. One, because that just, as far as the teams we play against, you hope that they have a shorter bench because, one, right, that's that is a huge strength of ours is our depth, right? So, maybe have a chance to wear those guys out. But two, right, you can really focus in on those 7-8 guys as opposed to, and I agree, I think we are a really difficult scout because we have, personnel that's different, with different strengths, but also play a ton of those guys. So you got to know what all 10 guys do, and if you want to stop us. So.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're good.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I wanted to take a look at maybe some of the stuff that you did. We talked about this a little bit before. We're going to look at some of the stuff you had last year for Florida. So, of course, very familiar with Todd Golden and some of the stuff maybe that he does. But let's take a look at some of the things that you're doing to kind of get guys prepared in a scout situation for what they're going to see on the game. All right, so what we're looking at here is Alabama versus Florida last season, the SEC tournament game.
Yeah, so just kind of our general process, and then I'll sort of show you what our final presentation looks like that we're showing to the team. But we're watching this raw game film. Going through that particular clip didn't help us very much, but we're watching their 5 most recent games at a minimum, and then oftentimes we try to find teams that guard similar to us,
right,
or maybe run offense similar to us, so that we can get more specific clips to show our team. But so right now our job is to sort of identify, okay, this is after a dead ball set, this is a set that Florida is going to run, where we call this like an Iverson cut over the top. They're going to switch their bigs and then go right into a ball screen. And so basically, throughout the course of the game, we're, a lot of times it's running clips back and paying attention to particular stuff, but, right here, you can see that like Zion pulling for the team, and we'll talk about him as we go through like the final presentation. Like this is a shot that a lot of guards that really like to shoot from 3 will take, but you can notice that that's not necessarily what he's really trying to do, right? So you might make a note, like number 0, unwilling to take, drill pull up 3 or something like that. And I'm a slow typer, so bear with me here.
It's all good.
Right, so you might make that note so that when coming to, knowing his personnel, that, okay, if we're a little bit late on his particular ball screen, it's not the end of the world. Let's see if we can. All right, and so this is just, like I said, just raw, and we'll go through what the final presentation looks like. But so Maddox Jeffries on our staff is responsible for, his one job in scouting. He does this for every team is under out of bounds sets. So like Maddox will have a database of a team's like last 200 under out of bounds that they've run, and try to simplify it down to maybe their 10 most common actions or whatever, and then we build sort of our defense to based on Coach Pearl's rules and his system for it, to take away everything that they do.
Right.
So so from my standpoint, a lot of times I'll just skip over under out of bounds because I know Maddox has this covered.
Gotcha.
And it's just watching the general flow of the game, right? And so even though he misses this layup right here, like I might put out that like as an offensive teaching point for our guys, when we like to run, like there's not a ton of urgency in transition. So if I see that consistently as I'm noting these games, all right, that's a point that really sticks out to me. Like there was no urgency to really stop the ball here, right? So offensive teaching point, no transition. Urgency, right? And so as a teaching point then to our team as we're watching film, we might be like, hey, they can't stop us from transition. Like if we're committed to running, right? This is an area of weakness for them. As they just, I know he misses the layup, but just getting to the basket.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a whole process of going through that. I think it'll probably be more interesting if everybody sees the final product. So like this is sort of what the final product for us looks like. We essentially will have watched last 5 games at a minimum, put like probably another 3 of teams that, earlier in the season that may guard. In this particular case, we had played them,
right.
Earlier in the season. And so there's a lot of clips in this from our first game, right? Because there's no better way to scout how a team would do against how we guard, obviously better than us playing them and
right.
seeing that film. And so you can kind of see as I just kind of scroll through here quickly, all this in light blue is going to be all personnel clips. So you can see that there's a ton. Then we kind of get to this gray area right here. This is all the teaching points that I was alluding to, right? And then everything in white for the most part here is going to be their man actions. Then we have some of their, if it's a team we like zone against, we'll do their zone actions as well. I forgot to mention that earlier.
Yeah.
Pressure sets right here, and then this orange part are just an assortment of clips of, we won't show all this to our guys, but assortment of clips of what teams have run against their defense that, is similar to what we do. And so, we might like it. So I can just kind of show you an example of, what this sort of final presentation looks like. So here we go. We'll start with personnel, right? And this is Zion pulling. He's not going to be back at Florida next year, but you can see, like, these are all, we have his stats, his conference stats, just a bunch of notes about him. He's their second leading scorer. We determined based on, his statistics and watching film that, we'd call him somebody that's better from 2 than 3.
Right.
Best playmaker on the team. It's just some things, and our guys aren't going to memorize this, but they see the same slide 3-4 times, right? It's like, okay, I may pick up on, like, what are the most important part? Well, better than 2 than 3, can go both ways. That sort of stuff is and so then we'll show, right, like his personnel clips. So there he is as a right-hand driver, right? And we got killed in this first game, and this film session was not very fun when we watched it after.
I'm sure that was brutal.
Yeah, but just like this is what he likes to do.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about how he likes to play out of crossovers, right? So he right-left crosses, then gets downhill. So just giving our guys, and showing that you can't just sit on his right hand because he's really capable of going left. That he likes to shoot floaters, right? So this is just one particular guy in personnel. So we'll go through all this sort of stuff on him. This is not like he will push off, so like draw attention to it, right? So like you can see he gives that little off arm little shove, like draw attention to it. If you get the opportunity to draw a charge, because he was an important player for them. So we'd go through their whole roster of guys that are going to play significant minutes, all right, and then we're gonna get into our teaching points. That'd be the next thing that we show our guys, right? And so teaching points, Florida, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say they're probably top. I think they were second in the country behind Texas A&M in offensive rebounding.
Yeah.
So you can see, and our guys get a little sensitive to it, especially when we show clips of us. But you can see that, right? Like we're going to show clips of them getting a bunch of offensive rebounds and pushing us around. And so like this is a whole point. This is a huge point of emphasis. Like if we want to win this team, we got to keep them off the glass.
Right. And
do it against other teams. But so this isn't a particular set. This is just like a major facet. A big thing that we talk about with our guys too is like we can't have 2 guys trying to block shots. So these are all just sort of like little teaching points, right? Because they're such a good offensive rebounding team, right? We can't have one guy contesting a shot and then another guy coming over to contest a shot, because then it's just going to give them 2 free points, right? So it's like we got to make an effort to have one guy, and so just little things. We like to ice the side ball screens, meaning like sending them to the outside, right? So just showing that we really need to keep them out of going in the middle of the floor, because when they go middle, they're really good, right? So there they draw foul. But when we are able to keep them on the side of the floor, right, it bothers their guard. So just showing these like little points before we even get to their sets about what that sort of looks like. So number of different stuff in there. I guess we can. Here's an example that I was even talking about from the Alabama game. This is something we showed our team. They're not great in transition defense, right? There's not a whole lot of urgency to get the ball stopped, and showing where we had some success in the first game, even though that was ugly, right? So our bigs can beat their bigs down the floor. Right, and even though we didn't score it, this was a successful possession just because we were able to run it and throw it past them, showing how they guarded, showing that because they're really long and good at blocking shots. Like if you go in there and jump off of 1 foot as opposed to playing off of 2 feet and finding the easy pass to the perimeter, like you're not going to be successful. And just showing some of this sort of stuff. Let's see what's another good example of stuff we'll show. Oh, and if teams double the post, right? Showing, all right, right? We're not, just be ready. They're going to double the post in this game if that ball goes in. So, Janai, especially being an All-American, just showing him that they're going to double team him and he's got to be ready for it. And once again, not a great possession. But so personnel, teaching points, and then from there we'll get into sort of their man-to-man offense, right? So, you may show a few clips of a team like Florida was a team that would push pretty quickly in transition, and even after made shots. So we'll make that point to our guys, like, we can't jog back because look, here they come down the floor, right, in transition. And when we were preparing for the SEC championship game, it was helpful that we had gotten blown out because our guys were really motivated. Obviously, you're playing for a championship, but to be able to show them all the things that we could have controlled in this game, gave us a lot of confidence. All right, but okay, so now we're showing that there's an early ball screen, and this is where we needed to be in our ice defense a lot earlier before he was able to attack downhill and get fouled. And then we'll talk about while we're showing this film, right? There'll be clips of them being effective, and then there'll also be clips of how the way we want to guard is successful.
Right.
So I want to say this is an example of it being successful. So we commit to our ice defense, right? We get this help defender all the way over there, right? He picks up the ball. I think they're going to settle for a tough shot here. Or throw it out to a non-shooter, right? And then that's that same clip where we didn't rebound. But that's just showing, like, look, this is a shot we want them to take based on our defense. And to be honest with you too, like, I know exactly what's coming a little bit more. We're a few months removed of this, so like at the time I've reviewed this tape so much that I can almost tell you what clip's coming next. It's been 4 months or so since I've looked at this, but so again, another transition ball screen that they run. Right, and then having success with it versus here, right? Vanderbilt plays a defense similar to how we would want to guard this, right? Not letting them get middle on the ball screen. And it just shows them settling for a shot we wanted them to take. If we would have gone over Tyree Samuel, who's not there anymore either, we would have talked about how he's better from 2 than 3.
Right.
We'll live with him shooting threes. And then we'll go through some of their sets, right? So, we'll go through some of the sets. So this is what we would call a horn set, right? Which is going to be the 2 bigs high on the elbows, 2 guards in the corners, right? And so, if we see this formation, right, we'll have a certain call that we want, for our bigs to call. Like, we want to send this guard to a certain way every time, and so every time we see horns, and that'd be what we would do, and it's our job as coaches, right, to take every single thing they may run out of horns and make sure that the simple coverage we're giving our team fits it all, right? And teams will run stuff that's new too, but at the end of the day, as long as we have a plan and then have it stick to our defensive principles that we've worked on all year, right, we can get most things covered. So here they run this set, and then they run it into like a zoom action, or we call it wing action, right? So that's them having success with it. And so we had talked about in this particular game, because he didn't, and actually those clips helped, but because he wasn't a willing dribble pull-up shooter, we actually talked about how we could go under his ball screen and not really require as much help. And so that's something that we didn't do in the first game because he had been shooting it better from 3. But in the second game, we made that adjustment. I think that was a huge reason for our success. But so I want to say here, Alabama has a decent amount of success with, guarding this action. And the whole point was, we never had to give on this, this first initial ball screen, we never had to give any help.
Right.
And so they didn't get as much advantage as they did in the clip previous against South Carolina. And so that, just the whole point of that being a successful coverage against, their action. And then finish it with a rebound. Yeah, and so then, same sort of thing. Then we'll go through their zone offense, right? So we call this particular action Yukon 4, but and that's just a term that, that's just some of our terminology.
Right.
But so just going through, and we played a few possessions of zone against them there, and it was pretty successful when we did it. And so being able to then mix that in, and we probably played 10 possessions of it in the SEC championship game. And so we were able to learn a lot by, okay, this is what they went to in this first game against us, right? So now we can prepare for this a little bit more,
right.
Because not a ton of teams had played zone against them, coming into our game at their place. But so, and a lot of times what we'll do, with some of our clips from the first, if we play a team the first time, we'll show pretty much all of it that's relevant, whether it's successful or not, just because we know that that's what they're going to go against us. Here we go. This is all right. So this next section is going to be pressure sets, right? And so here we're just talking about, okay, they have 2 guys up to start, and if they can't throw it into one of these first 2 guys, they're going to bring a 3rd guy up, right? So like that's just things that we'll harp over and over to our guys when we're getting into press, like, all right, 2 guys up to start, they'll bring a 3rd guy up, so that 3rd guy can't relax.
Right.
And then the last thing, and I don't have that in this particular presentation, but would go under the under out of bounds, side out of bounds sets and drill those with our guys. So that's kind of like, I know it's a lot, but that's kind of like
awesome,
the basic overview of what we show the team.
Awesome. I love this stuff. This is I eat this stuff up, man. But yeah, so last thing I want to ask you, man, is just kind of as a guy who's been doing this for a while, running through scouts and all this kind of stuff, like what is, if somebody wants to get involved in doing this kind of thing? I know you started you were GA at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of the path of trying to get into something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's no, there's no one path to get into this. My start, even before being a GA at Auburn, I was a student manager at the University of Miami, right? And so what I tell people that are younger than me all the time, especially college students, is like, if this is something you want to do, get involved as early as you possibly can. Like, for me, volunteering in college when you don't have a ton of real responsibility, right. Like it's not like you got to work a 9 to 5. Like, that's one thing. But if you're a college student or a high school kid, like, and you have an interest in doing this, get involved in volunteering. It doesn't matter how big or how little the position is, but if you get involved, the best way to get an opportunity when you don't have experience is by volunteering and getting the recommendation of somebody that does have experience, right? Yeah. And then if you're somebody that is out of school already, and this is something that you're trying to get involved with, I think doing it at any level to start, right? Like whether it's youth basketball, high school basketball, there's so many ways to get involved coaching, and it's just figuring out what makes sense for your life. But yeah, getting involved as quickly as you possibly can in any capacity, and then figuring out how to make it work from there would be the piece of advice that I'd give.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking a little time to go through all this. I'm sure we could have been in here for hours going through scouts, and I would have loved every minute of it. But, well, if you've enjoyed this content like I have, make sure you continue to follow us on all of our social media. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. But we are at The War Report on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're TW Report on TikTok. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.